Episode 1. She didn't write it. They say blood binds deeper than ink. But the first time Mia found the agreement under her bed, it wasn't hers. It was to 46A. And she was sure something had whispered her name. Not like a dream, not like a hallucination, but like a breath in her left ear. Chilled and wet, the kind that drips behind your neck and freezes your spine. She turned on the lamp. Silence. Her roommate, Lex, was out again, God knew where. The floor creaked like it did when someone walked just outside her room, but no shadow crossed the crack under the door. Then she saw it, a thin roll of parchment sticking just a bit out from under her bed frame, exactly where she swept the day before. She reached for it, fingers trembling, pulse echoing in her ears like a war drum. Unfolding it, the paper felt soft, not old, not weathered, almost wet. The red signature at the bottom wasn't ink. It was blood. The agreement was short, handwritten in a language she couldn't identify, but her name was there. Not Mia, her full name, Mia Therese Calloway, etched in red, circled, underlined. She hadn't written it. At the very bottom, barely visible in the red glow of her desk lamp, were 6 words that didn't need translation. What's promised must be delivered. Soon, her breath caught. She shoved it back under the bed and sat her day upright until morning. Eyes locked on that space, but by sunrise I was gone. She asked Lex about it. Lex just laughed, threw her black hair over her shoulder, and said, "You've always had weird dreams. Mia, maybe you should see someone, maybe," but it didn't feel like a dream. That night, she slept with the light on. No whispers came, no papers appeared, until the third night, the whisper returned. But this time, it wasn't her name, it was her mother's. Therese. The paper was back, and folded this time. On her pillow, there was a new line at the bottom now, written in English. She broke it. "You inherited." Mia's hands shook. She ran to the bathroom to splash cold water on her face, hoping the reflection would prove her sanity. But the girl in the mirror had eyes too wide, pupils too dark. Behind her, nothing, no one, but the smell came again. Copper, rotten sweet, like blood that had aged in wood. She ran back and lit the damn thing on fire. The paper hissed, sparkled and screamed. Yes, screamed, not loudly, not like a person, but like something alive in pain. The flames died too fast. The ash was gone before it touched the carpet. When Lex came home later, drunk and laughing, Mia didn't say a word. But that night, Lex didn't make it to her bed. She sleepwalked right into Mia's room and started whispering in a voice that was not hers. "It must be signed again. It must be signed again." Episode 2. The price of her name. They always say names have power, but Mia never knew hers could cost something. When Lex stood over her bed whispering, her eyes were wide open, but they weren't her eyes. The irises were black, not dark brown, not shadowed, black, like something had inked over her soul. Mia didn't scream. She couldn't. It felt like the room was vacuum sealed. Her lungs moved, but the air didn't come. Her lips parted, but no sound escaped. Lex leaned closer, whispered again. She took the vow for protection. "You carry the debt." Lex blinked, once, twisted and collapsed like a puppet whose strings were cut. No memory the next morning, no bruises, no explanation. And Mia, she checked into her bed, empty, but the silence felt heavier, as if something was waiting beneath the floorboards, listening, breathing slower than time itself. That day, she called her mother. Therese Calloway answered on the third ring. Mia didn't hesitate. "Did you ever make a deal with something?" Her mother didn't laugh. She didn't speak for almost 10 seconds. Then, in a voice Mia barely recognized, she said, "Where did you find it? Not what are you talking about? Not don't be silly, but where?" That night, Mia stared at the ceiling instead of sleeping. Her mother had hung up without explaining. Just one sentence before the line went dead. "Burn nothing, and for the love of God, do not sign." But it was already too late. The next morning, Mia's finger bled, a perfect, tiny slit at the tip. She hadn't cut herself, but the pillow was stained, and beside it another sheet of that soft, thick parchment. Only this time, the name wasn't hers. It was Lex, written in blood, signed in blood. Below it, the message was different. 2 names, 1 oath, 1 sacrifice. Mia clutched the paper and stormed into Lex's room. Lex was awake, eyes glazed, watching static on her laptop. White noise. "Did you sign anything? Anything weird?" Lex turned slowly, and, in her own voice but hollow, she replied, "I dreamed of a door, red, covered in teeth." Mia frowned. There was someone behind it. Lex whispered, "It asked me who to take," and then her eyes welled up. "I said not me." You don't know why. It felt so real. Mia backed away. Her legs were shaking. The air in the room thinned. And behind her, She swore she heard the floor creak under her bed again. The price of her name wasn't money. It was a soul, and someone had to pay. Episode 3, The Door with Teeth. Have you ever heard a dream growl? Mia had. It started the night after Lex confessed about the red door with one covered in teeth. Mia didn't want to sleep. She tried coffee, noise, even cold showers. Nothing worked. Her body collapsed just after 3 a.m. And that's when she saw it. She wasn't in her room anymore. She stood barefoot on a floor made of bones, slick and whispering beneath her. The walls pulsed, like lungs breathing around her. In the distance, something knocked. Then again, then faster. Knock, knock, knock. A door, red and veined with black muscle, stood alone in the center of the room. She didn't want to go near it, but her feet moved. Drawn, each step made the whispers louder. Not in a language, not in words, that in hunger. Then she saw it, the teeth. Not painted, not carved. Real, human teeth embedded across the door frame. Still blood-stained and twitching. They grinned at her, or maybe they grimaced. She couldn't tell. Then the door spoke, not in sound but in her bones. You carry what was not finished. She fed us fear. You will feed us more. Mia tried to turn around, but her body was stiff. She opened her mouth to scream, and all that came out was blood knitters. It tasted old. It stung her tongue. Behind the door, something laughed. Knock for me, Mia. She woke up thrashing. She'd soaked, arms scratched with marks she couldn't have made herself. Under her fingernails, something fleshy, red, still warm. Lex was gone when she ran into her room. Her bed was cold. Her phone, left behind. On the pillow, a new paper. The parchment again. This time, it had a symbol, not letters, not a name. A spiral with 13 jagged lines through it, and below it, the message. She opened it. Now it wants in. Mia collapsed to the floor. Fingers shaking, she called her mother again. No answer, just voicemail. So she did what she shouldn't have. She searched blood oath Doherty spiral online. No results, until one buried deep on an old forum called the Oathburn Archives. A post from 2011. If you see the red door, you were chosen as a proxy. Don't let it knock 3 times. If it does, someone's soul has already been taken. Mia stared at her screen. Then she heard it. Knock. Silence. Knock. Tears welled in her eyes. Knock. Her bedroom door creaked. She wasn't alone. Episode 4, Lex's last whisper. There are knocks that ask permission, and then there are knocks that don't need to. Mia stood frowning in the silence that followed the third knock. The kind of silence that rings louder than any scream. Her hand trembled over the doorknob. Her breath caught halfway between a gasp and a prayer. She didn't open it. She couldn't. But the door opened anyway. It didn't creak. It didn't slam. It simply glided open, like someone or something had never needed hinges to begin with. Lex stood there, but it wasn't Lex. She was barefoot, eyes empty. Her skin had gone pale, almost waxy, and a thin line of dried blood clung to the corner of her mouth like a secret. In her left hand, she held a piece of the parchment, torn, curled, and trembling. Mia, Lex's voice cracked, not from fear, from somewhere else. I tried to stop it. Mia stepped back. What did you open? Lex's eyes glistened with something that wasn't reflection. It pulsed like blood, like light trapped in her skin. I didn't open it, she whispered. I just listened, and listening was enough. She held out the parchment. The blood writing shimmered, almost alive in the lamp's glow. Mia didn't touch it, but she could read it. One soul offered, one soul promised, one soul lost. Lex's lips moved again, slower this time. They took my voice first, then my fear. Then they asked for a name. Mia shook her head. No, you can't fight this. Lex laughed, a sound like dry leaves being crushed under a boot. You don't fight the door, Mia. You replace yourself. And then just like that, Lex collapsed. No scream, no farewell, just a body hitting the carpet with a soft, terrifying finality. Mia rushed to her side, screaming her name, but Lex didn't respond. Her skin was cold. Her fingers still clutched the parchment, now blank, completely blank. A silence fell. Add 10. A whisper from under the bed. Not Lex, not Mia's, but familiar. We made a deal with her blood. You now carry her breath. Mia crawled away, trembling. Her chest burned with panic, with rage, with a terror that felt older than she was. The spiral symbol had appeared again in her wall. This time, scrawled in dark red. Pausing, she dialed her mother once more, and this time, her mother answered, but all she said was, You found the contract, didn't you? Mia choked back a sob. She's gone. Lex is gone. A long pause. Then, they won't stop until it's signed again. They never do. Mia stared at the lifeless body of her friend. and then she saw it. Beneath Lex's limp hand, a pen, waiting. Episode 5, The Proxy Signature. Some pens aren't meant to write. They're meant to bleed. The one lying under Lex's hand wasn't a Bic or a fountain pen. It was carved, yellowed, smooth, and warm to the touch. Mia didn't remember picking it up, but when she blinked, it was already in her hand. The tip seed red. Not ink, not fresh. Blood with memory. Lex's body lay beside her like a warning. Her eyes open, her mouth parted in a silent word Mia could almost read. Don't. But the room began to hum. Low at first, like the inside of a refrigerator. Then louder, deeper, like a chant without voices. Like vibrations crawling through her veins. The spiral on the wall pulsed in time with it, and the paper blank just moments ago was no longer blank. It had her name again, Mia Therese Calloway, underlined in blood. Above it, in barely their lettering, the phrase, proxy accepted, signature pending. The bone pen in her hand twitched, like it had a pulse. Mia dropped it. It landed beside Lex's wrist with a soft, sticky sound. She backed away, heart pounding so violently she thought it might break her ribs. She wanted to run, wanted to leave, but the door was gone. There was no door to her bedroom anymore, only the red one now. It had moved from her dream into her waking world. It stood where her closet should be, taller than before, its teeth longer, blacker, glistening like wet obsidian, and it was breathing. Every exhale rattled her bones. Every inhale pulled her skin tighter to her face. Mia screamed, but it came out as a whisper. Her voice didn't belong to her anymore. She clutched the edge of the dresser to steady herself. The drawer opened on its own. Inside, the original contract, the one from the first night, the one she had burned. But it wasn't ash. It was perfect, unmarked. And this time, there was a second name under hers. Her mother's, Therese Merrill Calloway. And beneath both, one gave breath. One must seal fate. Sudden Lilex's body twitched, not in a human way, in a puppet way. She sat her day up slowly, eyes still open, head jerking toward Mia like a machine misfiring. Her voice was no longer hers. Sign it, Mia, or we take you both. The bone pen lifted off the carpet, floated toward her like it had been waiting since before her birth. Mia stumbled back, heart racing, tears streaming, and then she made a choice, not to sign, but to write something else. She grabbed a pen of her own from the desk drawer. A real pen, cold, plastic, hers, and in thick, black ink. She scribbled on the contract. I refuse. The house screamed. Not the walls, not the air, the house. Everything shook. Lex collapsed, truly lifeless this time. The red door cracked down the center with a horrible, fleshy rip. And, silence. Mia dropped the pen. The paper had changed again. Refusal noted. Repercussions incoming. Episode 6, The Echo Clause. You think it ends when you say no, but a refusal is not a lock. It's an invitation to renegotiate. Mia Saturday in silence, chest heaving, surrounded by things that should not exist. Lex's body still and soulless. The spiral on the wall still glowing, though dimmer now. And the paper, the contract no longer held her name. It had absorbed her refusal like blood into gauze, but something new appeared now, written in trembling strokes that weren't hers. Echo clause accord IVATED. She didn't know what that meant. Not until the house started speaking in her voice. It began with small things. The sound of her breathing in the hallway when she wasn't there. A call from the bathroom while she sat her day frowning on her bed. Her own footsteps pacing above the ceiling, even though they lived on the top floor. Then the wall started whispering her name, not in fear. In fury, they mimicked her voice exactly. The way she said no. The way she said Lex. The way she begged her mother on the phone. It wasn't just repetition. It was rehearsal. The door didn't reappear. The red monstrosity with its teeth had vanished for now, but the air still tasted like rust, still buzzed with a tension that made every shadow feel intentional. She tried to call her mother again. This time, the call connected but no one answered. Instead, the voice that came through was her own. You broke the oath. We break the blood. The line cut. The lamp flickered, and suddenly her reflection in the mirror blinked first. Not her, the reflection. Mia Frowncy, her double smile just slightly and behind the glass. The room was empty. No Lex, no light, just Mia, alone, except for the thing in her skin. The fake Mia mouthed a phrase she couldn't hear, but understood anyway. Echoes fill the silence you left. Then it pressed its hand against the glass, and red began to bloom beneath its palm like a crimson flower, petals spreading across the surface. But when Mia touched the mirror, it was dry. No blood, no crack, just the aftertaste of something watching. She turned away, only to see her notebook, one she never used, open by itself. Scribbled across every page was the same sentence, hundreds of times. Refusal is the loudest signature. Mia tore the pages out one by one, desperate to undo it, to erase what she had done debut with every ripped sheet. Her ears rang louder, and then she realized the ringing wasn't in her ears. It was under the bed, buzzing, scratching, writing. She dropped to her knees, lifted the cover. Nothing, just silence, until her voice whispered up, "We never wanted you to sign a beat. We wanted you to scream." Episode 7, The Voice That Isn't Hers. There's a moment when you realize your mouth is moving, but the words aren't yours. Mia stood in the center of her room, trembling, trying to convince herself that silence meant safety. But the echoes were clever. They knew silence was just the pause before a scream. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from staring too long into her own reflection, waiting for it to move again. The spiral on the wall had faded overnight, but something else had taken its place. A small black crack, thin as a pencil line, ran from the baseboard to the ceiling like the wall had been fractured from inside out. And from that crack, a whisper leaked out, soft, constant, and familiar. Her voice, repeating things she never said, opened the red door. "I will be hers. I already signed." She tried recording it. She tried filming it, but on playback, all she heard was her own breathing. Desperate, she turned to the one person who might believe her mother. She dialed again. This time, someone picked up on the first ring. Not a hello, not a breath, just the sound of scratching. Mom," Mia whispered. The scratching stopped, and then her own voice answered. "You should have let her die instead of you." Mia dropped the phone. That wasn't her mother. That wasn't her. The mirror in the corner creaked. Even though mirrors shouldn't creak, she turned. Her reflection was back, but it was smiling again. Only now, the reflection was talking. Mia's lips were still. The mirror Mia was mouthing words in slow, measured silence. But Mia didn't need sound anymore. She could feel the words etching into her spine. "You're not the voice anymore. You're the vessel." That night, Mia tried not to speak, but something used her anyway. It started with humming, then mumbling in sleep. Then, around 3:08 a.m., she stood up conscious, frozen, and heard herself whispering into the dark. "I accept, I accept, I accept." She didn't want to. She couldn't stop it. Her body was saying yes. Her soul was screaming no. The next morning, her bathroom mirror had a new phrase scrawled across it in blood-red strokes. "The voice is borrowed. The dead is yours." And underneath that, carved deep into the glass, 3 words spoken. 3 days left. Mia stared at her reflection. She opened her mouth, and the voice that came out wasn't hers anymore. Episode 8, 3 days. 3 warnings. Some people get countdowns. Mia got warnings. 3 of them. 3 days. 1 final price. On the first day, she tried to pretend she was still herself. She stayed silent, duct taped her own mouth shut to stop the voice from using it again. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. But the voice didn't need her consent. It just needed time. At exactly 3 p.m., the lights went out. Not in her room. In the whole building. She peeked out the window. Every apartment across the complex had gone dark. The street lights too. The only light left was the one leaking from under her bed. Red, not glowing, pulsing. She didn't go near it. She didn't breathe too loudly. But then the first warning arrived. It came as a text message from Lex's number. "Mia, it's inside the mirror now, but soon it will want skin again." The message dissolved right in front of her eyes, pixel by pixel, like it had never been sent. She dropped the phone. That night, she covered the mirrors, all of them. It didn't help, because on day 2, the second warning came in a whisper, but not in English, not in any language she recognized. It came from the wall, not the spiral, not the crack, but the drywall itself. The voice rasped like sandpaper on bone, and it spoke through her ear. It didn't want to be heard. It wanted to crawl inside. She pressed her hands to her head, screamed, and then, in a sudden, jarring shift, it translated, "Your body is the 3rd door, and they've already knocked twice." The air grew thick. She ran to the sink, threw up something black and strainy. Her throat burned. Her nose bled. On the mirror above the sink and covered now only where it had appeared, scratched from the inside. Soon, Mia barely made it through the night. By day 3, her reflection didn't follow her anymore. It stared, unmoving, unblinking. It wasn't her, not anymore. And at 3 a.m., the final warning came. A voice rose from under her bed, familiar and soft. "Lex, you should have signed." Mia, she turned, heart stuck, eyes wet. Her friend stood at the foot of the bed, pale, mouth stitched shut with shadows, and yet she still whispered, Now they write it on your skin. Suddenly, her arms burned. Mia looked down. Her veins had begun to turn red, not blood red, ink red, and her skin, it was no longer blank. It had become a contract. Episode 9, The Skin That Speaks. There are pages you read, and then there are pages that read you back. Mia's arms were no longer hers. The veins beneath her skin had coiled into shapes cursive. Ancient, impossible shapes that shifted when she blinked. Not tattoos, not wounds. Script. Her skin had become the parchment. She grabbed a knife, not to hurt herself, but to erase. One shallow cut across her forearm. The blood that Oanseed wasn't red. It was black, like ink pulled from something ancient, buried beneath centuries of silence. She fell to the floor, shaking, and then, without warning, her body moved. Not by choice. Her hand reached up, gripped the wall, and she started writing. Fingers dipped in her own ink blood. She scrawled across the wallpaper, painting, symbol spirals, teeth, doors, names. Not her name, but Lex, and her mother's, and then a third name, unfamiliar, unreadable. But it glowed, like it had waited for centuries to be written again. When she tried to stop, her hand kept going. It didn't need her anymore. It belonged to something else. The whispers returned, this time through her lungs. Every breath formed syllables she didn't mean. A language older than pain. She collapsed against the floorboards, gasping, and then her voice spoke without her. Lo, Zu, commanding, this vessel acknowledges the pact. Her mouth twisted into a smile she couldn't control. This skin is now bound. The spiral on the wall ignited. A slow burn. No fire. Just red light dripping downward like wax. It pulled at her feet, crawled up her legs, and then silence. Dead silence. No hum, no whisper, not even her own heartbeat. She reached for her phone, desperate for reality. The camera opened. She aimed it at her reflection and screamed. It wasn't her. The girl in the phone had her facade, but eyes were hollow. The script on her skin moved like it was breathing. And then the reflection spoke aloud. A voice deeper, inhuman. The contract has been absorbed. Now we will speak with her soul. The mirror shattered. So did the phone. Mia clutched her arms, sobbing. The ink faded, but something was left behind. Not scars, not blood. A single phrase burned into her chest. Day 4, deliver. Episode 10, The Collector arrives. It doesn't knock. It doesn't crawl. It collects. Mia awoke on the 4th day with a word seared into her chest like a curse. Deliver. The mark throbbed beneath her collarbone, red and raw, as if it had been carved into her during a dream she hadn't survived. Her reflection was gone. Every mirror in the apartment had gone black. Not shattered, not fogged, just off. She no longer cast a reflection, and that was the first sign. The second came with a smell, a bitter rot, like old blood soaked in soil. It leaked from under the floorboards, from inside the walls, from the very air around her. Her nose bled at the scent. Her stomach turned. Then she heard it, dragging, not footsteps, not breathing, but something heavy being pulled across, would slowly, deliberately up the hallway toward her door. She stood frowning, back pressed to the closet, and then it stopped, right outside her room. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, until, tap, a single, gentle knock. No voice, no plea, just a whisper pressed into the walls of her mind. The collector is out. The door didn't open. It dissolved. The hallway beyond was not her building anymore. It was endless, dark, cracked, breathing. Its walls wept ink, its ceiling dripped time, and standing in the center of it was the collector, tall, wrapped in skin that wasn't his. No face, no hands, only long, jointless limbs, and a hole where the heart should be. In that hole, something pulsed. It was a contract, still bleeding, still alive. Mia stepped back, but the floor behind her was gone. Only blackness. The collector tilted what might have been its head, and then it spoke, but not with a mouth. It used her spine. The words crawled up from her stomach, scraped her throat on their way out. You refused. You resisted. Now you must replace. The spiral burned into her chest, flared. A final line formed across her, skin glowing, unreadable. She screamed, not in fear, but in surrender. The collector moved forward, one step, then two. Every motion made the walls tremble. Then it stopped, reached out, and handed her something, a new contract. This one, blank, except for one line. Choose who signs next. Mia collapsed, sobbing, and from behind her, in the shadows of her room, a voice whispered her name. Mia. It was her mother. Episode 11, A Signature in Bloodline. They say curses don't pass through blood, but some contracts do. The collector stood still, towering, waiting, in his hands the parchment, blank, empty, expectant. and behind Mia, barely audible, was the soft, trembling voice she hadn't heard in days. Her mother. "Mia, please, don't." Mia turned. Theory's Calloway stood in the doorway, pale, haunted. Her hands trembled as she stepped forward, but her eyes held the weight of secrets she had buried and called protection. "How long?" Mia choked. "How long have you known?" Theory didn't answer with words. She reached slowly into the collar of her blouse and pulled out a faded chain. At the end of it, a small scroll, old, brown, cracked at the edges. Mia's heart stopped. "You already signed," she whispered. Her mother nodded, tears catching the corners of her eyes. "I signed to save your life before you were even born." The collector shuddered with rage, but recognition. It bowed, slightly, respectfully. Mia stepped back. "Then why me?" "Because I refused the final term," her mother said. "I delayed the debt, but I never erased it." Behind them, the spiral on the wall flared, not red, but white, a light that pulsed with the beat of Mia's own heart. The contract in the collector's hands began to tremble. Lines of blood formed again from a pen, but from Mia's skin, the signature began to etch itself letter by letter. Mia Theory's Callow, Washington Way. She screamed. Theory's lunged forward, grabbing her daughter's arm, her fingers glowing with an unnatural heat. She placed her other hand over the contract and whispered a single word, "Transfer." The collector hissed. The light surged, and the parchment tore itself into, half-turned black, dissolved, gone. The other half remained, still bleeding, still unfinished, and a new name began to write itself on that piece. No. Mia stepped forward, her voice cracked like thunder. "You gave your life once. You don't give it again." She looked up at the collector, her voice steadier than it had ever been. "Take me." Theris gasped. "Mia." But the collector didn't respond with violence. It bent lower and held out the contract, but something had changed. Mia looked down and saw not her name, not her mother's, but a third name. Lex Marrow, the girl who spoke the name in the dream, the girl who opened the door, the girl who whispered, "Not me." When asked who should be taken, Mia turned to her mother. What was her real name? Her mother sobbed. "Alexandra Marrow, my sister's daughter, my niece, your cousin." She was the original signature. Mia dropped the parchment. Realization sliced deeper than any cut. The bloodline wasn't linear. It was a circle, and it was closing. Episode 12, The Circle Must Bleed. Bloodlines don't break. They bleed until the circle closes. Mia stared at the parchment, now bearing Lex's real name, Alexandra Marrow. The signature glowed, not complete, but restless, like it had been waiting for this moment for generations. Theris dropped to her knees, eyes wide with dread. "They never wanted me, or you." Lex was the one who opened the door. She was marked. She offered you without even knowing it. Mia's mind raced back. That whisper, that dream, not me. Lex had made the deal, but Mia was the one paying it. The collector straightened, limbs cracking as if bones were reforming inside borrowed skin. Its hollow heart began to pulse brighter, each beat pounding into Mia's mind like a countdown. Deliver, deliver, deliver. But now she understood. This wasn't about choosing who would die. This was about choosing who would end the circle. Mia picked up the contract. The edges burned cold in her hands. Blood dripped from her fingertips and hers. Not fresh. Inherited. The spiral on the wall began spinning. Not slowly now. It churned like a storm. A whirlpool in space-time. Memory. Voice seal collapsing inward. She turned to her mother. Can this be ended? Theris didn't speak. She simply reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a second, bumping old, dry, and cracked. This was mine, she whispered. I never used it. I couldn't. Mia took it for the first time. The collector stepped back, afraid. The parchment twisted in her hands, trying to resist, but Mia held it firm. She dipped the pen into her own chest where the final brand had formed. Not her name this time, not a symbol, a sentence. The blood ends here, and she wrote it onto the contract. Not a signature, not an offering, but a statement of severance. The parchment screamed. The room tore open. The collector convulsed, its form unraveling like smoke pulled back through a keyhole. The spiral exploded in light, blinding, holy, terrifying. The apartment shook, walls cracked, glass shattered, mirrors wept, ink and burst. And, silence, real silence. No breath beneath the bed, no voice in the walls. Just Mia, alone, alive. Theris wept, collapsing into her daughter's arms. The contract, gone. The bone pen, crumbled. Only a single thing remained. Resting on the floor beneath the bed, a small, charred strip of parchment, fused into the wood, unreadable now, but it no longer pulsed. The curse was over, but Mia would never sleep with the lights off again. Episode 13, The Contractless. Freedom doesn't feel like silence. It feels like something's missing. 3 days had passed. The mirrors were normal now. Her reflection didn't blink without her. The spiral on the wall had flaked off into dust. The ink symbols on her skin were gone. But Mia still checked under her bed every night. Because freedom, she learned it, doesn't come with closure, just absence. And absence is its own kind of haunting. Her mother moved in with her. For now, they didn't talk about Lex. They didn't talk about the collector. They didn't talk about what nearly returned. They just existed. Survivors. One night, as Mia washed the dishes, her mother appeared behind her, face pale and much shaking in her hands. "Mia, where's your phone?" She frowned. "On the table." "Why?" Theris held up her own phone, face drained of all color. "You just texted me." Mia grabbed it. One message. From her own number. "You didn't end it. You just passed it." The screen flickered, died. A knock echoed down the hallway. "Is off." Familiar, but not on their door. Mia stepped into the hallway. Apartment 3BS. Lex old unit. Empty since that night. The door was ajar, and inside Adam light. Faint static. Ed. Whispers. Not in Mia's voice this time, but a new one. A girl's voice. Young. Curious. Repeating a name. Lex. 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 Mia turned slowly. A child stood at the far end of the hallway. Barefoot. Eyes wide. She pointed to Mia's apartment. "Something's under your bed." Mia didn't scream. She didn't move. She just nodded. Softly, because now she understood. You don't destroy the agreement. You just become the one who never signs. And the blood remembers, even when the page is blank.